Yes, mate. So right now you're under arrest for suspicion of murder, 30th of July. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Obviously, necessity is going to be competent effective investigation to prevent further harm.
On July 30th, 2024, in Hackney, a crowded area in northeast London, a CCTV camera mounted on a residential door captured a seemingly normal moment that turned into a horrific tragedy. In the video, a gray van slowly stopped at the side of the road. The surrounding air was quiet. Only the sound of traffic from afar could be heard. A few minutes later, the car door opened. A man stepped out, in his hand glistening with the cold steel of a knife nearly half a meter long. Without hesitation, he walked straight towards a middle-aged man carrying a bag in his hand who had just finished his shift and was walking home. That man was Derek Thomas, 55 years old, a bus driver, a father, a pillar of the family. In just a split second, he became the target of a brutal attack. The knife-wielding man was none other than Kamar Williams, 34, his daughter's ex-boyfriend. The CCTV footage became crucial evidence, clearly reflecting the coldness and calculation in every step of the murderer, reflecting the anger and hatred he had nurtured for so long. That fateful encounter, between a father who accidentally returned home after a day of work and a man full of hatred, turned a peaceful moment in a small street into the scene of a shocking crime in London. Derek Thomas, 55, is a bus driver in London. His colleagues see him as a model of hard work and responsibility. Never late for work, always willing to pick up extra shifts when someone needs help. Derek is seen as a reliable pillar in a high-pressure profession. At home, he was a devoted husband and a devoted father to his children. Derek often spent his limited time after work with his family, encouraging them to pursue their studies and live responsibly. Neighbors described him as a gentle, approachable man, always ready to lend a helping hand when someone was in trouble. To the community, he was a familiar face, the image of a quiet but kind citizen. The killer, Kamar Williams, 34, had been in a relationship with his daughter. Initially, Kamar appeared to be a normal man, but after the relationship broke down, he quickly revealed his psychological instability. His hot temper, irritability, and controlling tendencies gradually made Kamar a concern. Instead of accepting the end, he nurtured bitterness and hatred. That anger over time turned into malice, and the target Kamar targeted was the Thomas family, people who once considered him a relative. Before the incident, Derek Thomas and his family lived a quiet life, focused on work and daily activities. Their small house in Hackney was a place of togetherness, away from the chaos outside. For Derek, the greatest joy was the peace of his wife and children after a long day of working on the crowded London buses. On the surface, Kamar Williams was seen as an ordinary man, not too outstanding but not attracting much attention. However, after his relationship with Derek Thomas's daughter broke down, his personality began to change in a negative direction. From a seemingly stable individual, Williams gradually became extreme, losing control of his thoughts and actions. While the Thomas family tried to keep their lives peaceful, Williams continually disrupted that balance. He often showed up at inappropriate times, harassed, and even made threats. These actions not only worried Derek, but also created a tense atmosphere for the entire family. The bitterness of being rejected and the inability to let go of the old relationship sent Williams spiraling into hatred. From anger, he turned to obsession. From obsession, he nurtured thoughts of revenge. It was this chain of negative emotions that pushed Williams to the dangerous edge, preparing for an irreversible tragedy. The tragedy began with troubling signs. After the relationship broke down, Derek Thomas's daughter began receiving threatening messages from Kamar Williams. The messages were no longer pleas, but threats, including the short but haunting phrase, "Watch this space. a chilling warning that something bad was about to happen. After the breakup, Kamar Williams became increasingly obsessed with the lost relationship. Control and jealousy consumed him, and his substance abuse led to erratic, explosive behavior. Despite being forced to leave the home several times, he found his way back, leading to violent arguments and elaborate lies that left the Thomas family in a constant state of tension and fear. Williams began to appear regularly around Hackney, where the Thomas family lived. He walked slowly on the streets, observing every gesture, following the smallest habits of the family, like a silent ghost, threatening the peace they once had. Williams began to clearly prepare for a violent plan. He sought to buy a sharp knife nearly 50 centimeters long, described as a short blade. The possession of this weapon showed that the intention to cause harm was no longer limited to impulsive threats, but had turned into a deliberate plan to kill. Although Derek's daughter tried to help and encourage him, her efforts quickly fell flat. Williams had crossed a dangerous line, from mental hatred to actual preparation for an attack. On the evening of July 30th, 2024, on a quiet street in Hackney, Derek Thomas finished his shift late. He walked slowly home, carrying a few bags of groceries. For him, this was just a normal evening after a long, tiring day, but no one knew that tragedy was approaching. On the other side of the road, a gray van stopped. The door opened slightly, and Kamar Williams quietly stepped out. Without a sound, he quickly moved forward, keeping enough distance for the victim to not realize the danger. When he got close enough, Williams pulled out a half-meter-long knife hidden in his sleeve. In an instant, he attacked Mr. Derek. The knife slashed repeatedly on Derek's body, not giving Derek any chance to fight back. He collapsed on the sidewalk, blood staining the road. A fatal stab straight to the chest took his life almost immediately, ending the life of a father, a gentle husband. After the attack, Williams did not stop or look back. He hurried back to his car and sped away into the darkness, leaving the scene in an eerie silence. On the sidewalk, only Derek Thomas's motionless body and haunting bloodstains remained, marking the moment the tragedy had officially occurred. Screams of panic were heard after the perpetrator left the scene. Some residents saw the whole incident through the window and immediately called 999 to report the emergency. In that urgent situation, every second was heavy. Just a few minutes later, an ambulance arrived along with a police patrol car. The medical staff immediately deployed CPR on the spot, trying to stop the bleeding and performing chest compressions on Derek Thomas. But the fatal stab wounds, especially the stab wound to the chest, made all efforts hopeless. Derek was eventually pronounced dead at the scene. The once quiet street was transformed into a scene of mourning. Blockades were erected, and the lights of ambulances and police cars illuminated the corner. People gathered at a distance, watching in silence, unable to believe that the gentle man they knew every day had suddenly passed away in such a tragedy. On the night of July 30th, the police sealed off the entire area and collected data from surrounding security cameras. CCTV footage of the gray van stopping in front of the house and the moment Kamar Williams attacked with a knife became important evidence for the investigation. At the same time, Derek Thomas's body was taken for an autopsy. The forensic report concluded that he died from multiple stab wounds. Among them, the fatal stab wound to the chest stopped the heart for only a few minutes, leaving the victim with no chance of survival despite emergency treatment. Other injuries on the body showed the brutality and fierceness of the perpetrator's attack. The results of the crime scene and autopsy confirmed the conclusion that this was a premeditated, intentional murder, not a spontaneous act. Immediately after collecting data from the scene, the police focused their investigation on the recent conflicts between Kamar Williams and the Thomas family. Witnesses, including neighbors and relatives, confirmed that Williams had appeared around the house many times, pressuring and threatening Derek's daughter. In particular, the series of text messages that Williams had sent before became key evidence. In those messages, he not only expressed his anger, but also revealed warning words, showing that his intention to cause harm had been brewing in advance. The phrase, "watch this space," was quoted verbatim in the investigation file, reflecting the cold and calculating nature of the killer. Police quickly determined that this was no random attack. Text messages, security cameras, and witness statements pointed directly to one man, Kamar Williams, who had been close to the Thomas family, but had become a deadly threat after the breakup. August 1st, 2024. Just 2 days after the crime, police found a gray van abandoned in a deserted area. Upon inspection, they found several personal items inside, including a bank card in the name of Kamar Williams. This was direct evidence that he was the prime suspect. August 3rd, 2024. Williams is again captured on security cameras driving a BMW. In the video, he attempts to elude police, suggesting he intended to remain on the run rather than surrender. August 26th, 2024. After nearly a month in hiding, Williams's escape ended at Notting Hill Carnival, London's largest street festival, where thousands of residents and tourists flocked to attend. Amidst the bustling crowd of music and color, police suddenly approached and restrained Williams on the spot. The arrest was quick, ending nearly a month of intense hunting and opening the legal proceedings.
Yes, mate. So right now you're under arrest for suspicion of murder, 30th of July. You don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later on in court, anything you do say may be given in evidence. Obviously, necessity is going to be competent, effective investigation to prevent further harm.
After his arrest, Kamar Williams initially denied any involvement in Derek Thomas's death, attempting to cover up his actions with incoherent excuses. However, the evidence that emerged quickly chipped away at that layer of denial. The police presented a series of key evidence, threatening messages. In the phone and archived data, the series of messages that Williams sent to Derek's daughter clearly showed hatred and revenge. Many CCTV footage recorded the scene of him getting out of the van, approaching and attacking the victim. This is undeniable visual evidence. And during the investigation, it was determined that Williams had thrown the knife into the river to conceal his actions, but witness testimony and travel records reinforced this detail. A bank card in his name was found in the abandoned van, tying Williams directly to the scene. In the face of this evidence, any denials of guilt became meaningless. The case file was firmly consolidated, paving the way for Williams to be prosecuted for premeditated murder. On the 7th of July, 2025, Kamar Williams's trial began at the Old Bailey in London, where the most serious cases in the UK are heard. In his presentation, the prosecutor laid out the entire chain of evidence, from threatening text messages, CCTV footage of the attack, bank cards found in the van, to information about the disposal of the weapon. This evidence was strung together to form a clear picture of deliberate preparation and execution of the crime. The defense attorneys sought to argue that Williams had been mentally unstable following the breakup of his relationship and asked the court to consider a reduced sentence. However, the jury found that the preparatory actions, such as stalking, purchasing a 50-centimeter knife, and choosing the timing of the attack, showed deliberate intent, not a momentary loss of control. After hours of deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous decision. Kamar Williams was guilty of murder and possession of a dangerous weapon. The verdict affirmed the seriousness and intentionality of the case and brought the proceedings to a clear conclusion in the eyes of justice.
Determined attack. You killed him even though at one time you saw him as a father figure.
On the 18th of July 2025 at the Old Bailey, the atmosphere in the courtroom became tense as Judge Angela Rafferty KC read out the verdict for Kamar Williams. Based on the jury's verdict and the extremely serious nature of the case, she sentenced the defendant to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 29 years before he could be considered for parole.
Kamar Williams, the sentence for murder is life imprisonment. That's the sentence that I will pass on you. I must by law set a minimum term that you must serve of that life sentence before you can even be considered for release. The law says that I must start calculating the minimum term that you must serve at 25 years. I must look at I add to this starting point of 25 years factors that make this murder even more serious. A plan to do harm given the earlier texts, your behaviour in the street where the Thomas family lived, and the time you had to consider whether...
The verdict brought a moment of silence to the courtroom. The victim's family burst into tears and hugged each other in a mixture of grief and relief. After nearly a year of waiting and nearly 2 decades of Derek Thomas's life being unjustly taken, they believed that justice had finally been served. Facing the harsh sentence, Williams kept a cold face, showing no emotion. But the verdict affirmed that intentional, premeditated acts of violence will be punished with the harshest punishment under the law. The case of Derek Thomas is a stark reminder that emotional abuse never stops with threats. When resentment is nurtured and turned into action, the consequences can be irreversible. Derek Thomas, a gentle father, devoted to his family and work, lost his life because of someone else's blind hatred. This heartbreaking story highlights that any signs of control, intimidation, or harassment in a relationship should be taken seriously and addressed promptly. Behind the sentence for the perpetrator is a message of social vigilance. Just a little bit of subjectivity or indifference can lead to irreparable loss, and more importantly, it affirms that justice may come late, but it will not be overlooked. Behind the sentence for the perpetrator is a message of social vigilance. Just a little bit of subjectivity or indifference can lead to irreparable loss, and more importantly, it affirms that justice may come late, but it will not be overlooked.